Cheers. Thanks for stopping by my channel. Tony here. As you can see, we're in Studio B where we keep our Beatles, Bond, and our bourbon, which actually you could do some bourbon, a little Jack Daniels and Coke. This is an anniversary edition. It's been 56 years this November that John and Yoko released Unfinished Music Part 1, Two Virgins album, the controversial record that you could say was the beginning of the breakup of the Beatles. It was then when the Beatles fought this record to be released, when EMI fought this record to be released, when Capitol fought this record to be released, and when fans fought against Yoko, who they blamed for John's, you might call it mental and moral decline. But we'll go into some of the details there. I'm going to show the record. Here's the brown paper sleeve that was placed over the cover. As you know, the cover is a black and white photo that John took with a stop shutter camera that Tony Bramwell set up for him in his home in Kenwood. And we're going to see, I'll show you the cover. There would be a little bit of editing there, but this is the original release, and this is the American release. The UK release actually was originally released in mono. They're very rare. The American is a stereo, do-over, electronically stereoized or whatever you call it. But in the UK, EMI would not distribute it. It was an Apple record. They wouldn't distribute it. So Trax Record picked it up, and they, did the marketing. And if you look at a label, you can find them on YouTube. If you look up a mono label from the UK, it has the track emblem on the Apple sticker. This one does not. I'll go over the details and who marketed and distributed it back here in the U.S. Actually, it's funny because in, I believe, 69, the record came out in November of 68. And in 69, 30,000 copies of this album, Two Versions, as we call it, was confiscated at Newark Airport because of it was deemed obscene. So there's so much controversy with this record. People hated it. EMI hated it. They refused to, like I said, market it. I'll go into some of those, little bits and pieces I picked up from different books. What I got was quite a bit of information from Yoko's book. Yoko has a biography, autobiography. Actually, it's an unauthorized biography. It's not an autobiography. This book here, this has some really good tidbits on the Two Versions album that her and John recorded in John's little studio in his attic. And in that studio, he had tape recorder, obviously. I have some of the contents here. He had a couple Rickenbacker guitars. He had a Mellotron. He had an electric piano, probably the one he used at Met Stadium, in Queens in New York. It looks like it could have been that one. But, various pieces of equipment. And that's where he recorded it one evening in May of 68 in one day. And Cynthia, his wife, was on holiday in Greece and in Paris. He invited Yoko Ono over. They were kind of awkward. He invited her over. She took a cab over. His assistant, who was there, I believe, left. So it was him and Yoko. And Yoko said, "You want to go upstairs and basically, see my etchings," type of thing. "You want to go upstairs and here's some things I'm working on." And Yoko said, "Sure." And of course, John started playing her a lot of that avant-garde stuff that he was working on for the Beatles' White Album, which was also released coincidentally in November of 68. So that's kind of weird. But he had the tapes there, so they were listening to different things, probably Revolution Number 9 and Revolution, the avant-garde chant that Yoko was on. And Yoko said, "Why don't we do our own recording?" And John agreed, and they recorded. And he said once we were done, the sun came up and we made love. They consummated their relationship. Next day, I believe, Cynthia came home. Yoko was still there. They were both in white bathrobes. She was probably in, I believe maybe it was a Japanese bathrobe. Maybe it was Cynthia's. Maybe it was hers that she brought with her bag. I'm not quite sure, but that was the end of John and his marriage, and subsequently divorced, and he married Yoko at Gibraltar, right? So it's kind of hard to believe that it's been 56 years. It was released in the U.S. on November 11, 68, and in the U.K. on 11/29/68. Only 5,000 copies were pressed in the UK, and those I believe were mono, and more were pressed for the United States, and actually sold about 120,000 copies initially, so it charted. It never charted in the UK. The people in the UK were in an uproar. They basically turned on John, turned on Yoko, and I believe it was the beginning of the hatred toward Yoko, because a lot of folks were just appalled, not by the music, because the music was nothing but sound effects, some background music. It was a Guy Lombardo tune going on the radio that John, filtered into his tape recordings. So it wasn't just that the music was nothing, it was just sound effects. People chanting, maybe like orgasm sounds. If you listen to it on YouTube, you pick up your own interpretations. It's a short record. It's about 15 minutes a side. I'll show you the actual record. I have like I said, an original USA. At one time, they were very difficult to find. I found one years ago. I actually have another one I picked up, but I found one years ago at this mall flea market type of thing. And my wife remembers it better than I do, and she said that I was really excited to find this record, because it's kind of like a grail at that time. No one could find it. You're talking maybe 40 years ago when I found this record. They were more difficult to find then, pre-internet, than they are now, obviously. But here again, here's the paper sleeve, and on the back it's a chapter, Genesis chapter 2, 21, 22, 23, 24. 25, and they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. John said, why not put us naked on the cover? We're all basically naked. And the idea of two virgins came about, where John said, we're kind of all innocent, and the world is mad, and he basically wanted that to be conveyed on this cover. He said, we felt like two innocents caught in a world gone mad. John, I hate to tell you this, but the world is still going mad. So nothing has changed in the last 60 years or so. So it was distributed by Trax, who was the Who's label. Also, they distributed and marketed Hendrix originally. If you remember the naked girls on the cover of Electric Ladyland album, the double album by Hendrix, and it was marketed here by Tetragrammaton, which was a label that did some rock music, and it was actually co-owned by Bill Cosby, the now infamous comedian. In the UK, the monos were only available in or via mail order, because I don't think any stores wanted to carry it, and the stores that did carry it, they were either under the counter, as there was some type of obscene contraband. This was 68. Obscene contraband, or they were in a brown paper bag, and that's what we got here in the U.S. So one day it was recorded. John was 28. Yoko was 34 at the time. So that adds up, because John would have been, or will be, 84 or something, or at his next birthday. So like I said, it was recorded in Kenwood, Surrey, which was the house that John bought in 64 for the sum of about £20,000. That sum today would have been well over £600,000 in 2023, 2024. So that was a bargain, okay? Back in the attic where they went to record, there was also an electric organ and a Vox AC30 amplifier, different guitars, a Hofner Senator, a Rickenbacker 1996, and a Rickenbacker 325. Now, you people who do guitars, that's pretty cool. So I'm just going to show the record. I have some, like I said, I did some quick censoring because I don't know what the YouTube's policies are, but that's the record. You can see this record is mint. The record is near mint. I don't think I played it once, if I did play it. And there's John. This is a Stark photo that he did, and you can see there's the back, which was the back cover, and it looks like in between their legs it could be a cat. I see two little eyes that I haven't seen mentioned in any of the books I read or the internet I read on that. But this is Apple Records in association with Tetragrammaton Records, May 1968, made in Merry England. That's the byline. And even though Paul was basically opposed to this release, they thought it would damage the Beatles' reputation, and it really didn't do that. Maybe it damaged John and Yoko's reputation, but it didn't do that to the Beatles. And like I said, in November of '68, they subsequently released the White Album, which this kind of was a an afterthought. It was more of a shock. The people they said that the women in London were using smelling salts when they got a glimpse of this. Rolling Stone later printed the cover in one of their magazines, and here John wrote, which was still, I don't understand what he meant and why he did it, but John wrote the basically liner note. When two great saints meet, it is a humbling experience. The long battles to prove he was a saint. Paul McCartney. Unfinished Music #1, 2 versions, Yoko Ono and John Lennon. You can see that there. Okay. And here's the actual Apple press label. And there's the other green Apple core. And really beautiful. 56 years old, people. It's hard to believe, right? 56 years old. John would have been 84. And Yoko's 92 or something, right? I'm not sure. Or 90, I don't know. But anyway, that's this. That's the end. It's not the end of the video. I'm going to talk a little bit about it more. I'm just going to give you some insight onto what the outrage was when this record came out. And guess what? We're not even talking about the music. We're talking about the cover, which shows that John and Yoko were so far ahead of us, ahead of our time, their time, that 60 years later, we're talking about the cover. And I'm sure people who are in the pop culture realm, they could talk about it a lot more, what it meant to pop culture and what it meant to awareness. But like I said, Rolling Stone ended up printing the cover in its entirety in their magazine. I believe there was a poster. I read somewhere there may have been a poster included in some of these. Maybe it was a reissue. A reissue came out on CD, which has an extra bonus track of and I'll write it in my description, of Yoko singing a love song, and it's really beautiful. And it could be John playing guitar. It might be someone who's imitating John's chord pattern, but it's a really beautiful song, and that's on some of the reissues. A lot of bootlegs came out in the 70s, 69, 70s, when this record was hard to find. I believe the records that I have are legitimate copies. So the British press hated it. Scores of letters poured in to People magazine or People newspapers, which was I believe a newspaper like News of the World. Hilariously awful and excessively uncharming. The News of the World had a headline that said, "Oh, Yoko." Derek Taylor and his associates and his staff for Apple did the best to defend it, but he said it was hopeless. Personally, I see nothing wrong with the record sleeve or the disc. Nobody ever criticized Adam and Eve, he said. But there's an interesting quote in here And I'm going to read from this passage in this book from the head of EMI, Mr. Joseph Lockwood, I believe it was, Sir Joseph Lockwood. And there was such an outrage that they would, like I said, EMI was not going to market or distribute this record. They didn't know what to do with it. John was adamant. He didn't care. He was going to release it. Subsequently, it did get released. But they had to call a meeting between John, Yoko, Paul, and Sir Joseph Lockwood. He was the head of EMI. And this is a actual transcript. I'll show you here. You can see that where that little middle of the paragraph there. And I'll read it because it's kind of shocking to me that basically they got no respect. John got no respect. So this is the exchange. John to Sir Joe. Well, aren't you shocked? Sir Joe. No, I've seen worse than this. John. So it's all right then, is it? Sir Joe. No, it's not all right. I'm not worried about the rich people, the duchesses, and those people who follow you, but your mums and dads and girl fans will object strongly. You will be damaged, and what will you gain? What is the purpose of it? And Yoko chimes in. Yoko never quiet, right? It's art. And this is where it gets kind of disparaging. Sir Joe said to them, well, or he said it to Yoko directly, well, I should find some better bodies to put on the cover than your two. They're not very attractive. So they later cut a deal with Bill Cosby's label. That folded in 1970, I believe. So it really didn't have a lot. I don't know what happened to all the copies that were confiscated at Newark Airport in 69 because the company ended up going bankrupt. That was putting them out. Maybe that's why there were bootlegs and stuff. So really no respect. John took the pictures himself. He said, we're all naked, really. That's the type of thing that John would say. Didn't have a fancy lighting system. You could still see that there were litter and folded clothes or pillows on the floor. They didn't even comb their hair. It's just, it's just fascinating to me that we're talking about it, or I'm talking about it, because it is an anniversary, and I want to put Beatles stuff out there. I know everyone in the YouTube community, VC community, love it. And I love John's quote. We felt like two innocents caught in a world gone mad. And that's 56 years ago. So kind of hard to believe, right? 56 years ago. And, it still resonates with Beatle fans. And I'm sure it's a grail for Beatle fans to get an original of this. They're going for 100, maybe, if you could find an original, maybe more. I remember I probably paid almost that when I bought it 40 years ago, because 40 years ago, or 35, 40 years ago, pre-internet, stuff like this was hard to find. There were a lot of Beatle fans that were coming up, my age Beatle fans. So when, like I said, in 69, January 69, I didn't say the date, but it was January 69, 30,000 or so copies. That's a lot of copies. Probably came off a cargo plane or through the, through the docks of North Jersey, where the docks are by Newark Airport, Elizabeth. So it was the first Beatle. It was the first solo enterprise that John took that didn't have any Beatles on it at all. No other Beatles on it at all. It was a Guy Lombardo tune that ran through it, it's just, to me, it's an amazing document of John and Yoko's first date. First time they actually got together. They knew each other for a couple of years. John called her up. He got the courage to call her up for whatever reason, and we know his wife wasn't home at the time. So that's basically it. Nothing else to say. A lot of notes, but it really go fast. You could find it all in these books I picked up. Let me see here. And on the Wikipedia site, unfinished music there. Hope you like this little tribute to the two versions. And as far as the music goes, I think it was pretty cool. I listened to it obviously before I did this. It's also online. You can listen to it on different internet VC channels that play copyrighted music. So pretty weird. The revolution on the White Album is much tighter, much more interesting. It's almost as long because I believe these sides were about 30 minutes for the total record, so 15 minutes a side. And I believe Revolution is probably that on the Beatles' White Album. So there you have it again. The mono one is the one to find. They are on eBay. I've seen some on eBay. And like I said, I don't believe they... But I saw one that said mono sleeve and stereo record. So I'm not sure what the... what happened back then, what the deal was. But I know they were originally in mono. They were synthesized into stereo later on. John was considered the engineer because he recorded it in his attic studio. The helm that he had, the attic studio, was built. It's a part of a Hill estate. I think it was Sir Hill. It was his estate, and they cut it up, and the houses were sold. I think Tom Jones bought a house there. Cliff Richards bought a house there. And John put equivalent of about $1 million into that home again, in addition to what he paid for it. Him and Cynthia renovated it. They made some of the rooms bigger. He had the attic studio. I believe it was a 3-story building type of thing. And, the rest is history. The photograph was done somewhere else, not at the house. That was done later on. I have it written down here somewhere, but you could find that information. Oh, it was on 34 Montague Square, and the photo was taken was set up by Tony Bramwell, and it was done in October of '68. So right before the record was set to press, John thought, let's go naked. Originally, it was supposed to be Yoko naked, so we missed out on that, but we did get John and Yoko naked. So, I think it's great. I'm so happy I have this. I'm sure every Beatle fan wants a copy of it. And there you can see again. And this is really a beautiful white. It's been protected. I've kept it, in a plastic sleeve and things. And that's it. So, the end, right? Now I could say it. So thanks a lot. Thanks for all the subs. If you haven't subbed, please consider subbing, and check out my other video. I did a whole birthday night, her 90th birthday, on Yoko. I did a bunch of her albums, talked about her legacy, her relationship. I also went a few weeks ago to the cremation site of John Lennon's remains in 1980, the day after he was assassinated, in December 9th, I believe. He was cremated there, and that's Ferncliff Cemetery in Westchester County, the state of New York. So check that out. And that's it. So tell me what you think. Hope you like this video. It's hard to believe, right? An anniversary of the Unfinished Music Part 1. There was also a Part 2 and a Part 3. So this controversy didn't stop John from producing other avant-garde recordings with Yoko. Like I said, the recording is nothing to write home about. There's some interesting things. It's kind of where, in between sound effects, it's kind of what Pink Floyd did, and on Dark Side of the Moon with radio transmissions and songs in the background. So they were ahead of their time. They were true artists. They were in love, and we still miss John. It's sad every time I read about John's great escapades and we'll never know what he could have done after 1980, right? So that's the end. Thanks a lot for the subs. If you haven't subbed, please consider it. Really helps us out. Talk to you later. Ciao.